Welcome. We're so glad to see you tonight. I'm Jennifer Martin. I'm president of HEAL, which stands for Health and Environmental Alliance here at Sun City, Roseville, where we meet once a month to talk about health and environmental issues. And we're so pleased today to be able to present Elana Freeland to talk about 5G and ionized skies and all kinds of things that we've been talking about at our HEAL meeting for months now. But before she comes on, I want Deborah Whitman from Environmental Voices to come up and give her a really a welcome and a great introduction.
I'm Deborah Whitman, and I'm the founder and president of Environmental Voices. Our website is environmentalvoices.org. Then I wanted to say something a little bit about Elana Freeland's book, because I'm dyslexic and I don't really like to read. So, especially when you see a book like this. So what happened was I knew I was going to have her as a guest speaker, and I thought, well, I need to start reading her book. So I took it on a flight with me, and I started reading it. Well, to help me read, I have to highlight things, and I only highlight important things, to go back and review it. Well, every sentence was highlighted. I'm not kidding you. And I was so angry because my highlighter ran out. So she has her books back there. I highly recommend that you purchase her books, and she's going to be doing a book signing afterwards. So I get an autograph book from her, and I really encourage you to do that. And I have heard a lot about Elana before and seen some of her videos. She does a lot of presentations. And again, her books are fabulous. She's written several books, and you can get them on Amazon. So she knows a lot. She's geared her talk about 5G tonight to kind of educate us a little bit more about what's going on with 5G as well. So I'd like to introduce Elana Freeland.
Thank you for coming, everyone. I am from Olympia, Washington. I flew down this morning, and it was raining when I left, of course. And I am here to talk about 5G because I understand you are a model city along with San Francisco and New York City for the 5G rollout. And this should be of great concern to you, and I will talk about that after I've presented some other ideas, which I think you need in order to see why I find it concerning. I'm sure you've already read many articles from a variety of angles of concern, but I think what I'm going to present is a little different from any of it. So what I have here is As Above, So Below by Hermes Trismegistus. This is a very ancient, occult, alchemical formula, and I believe it is what is going on today in what I am calling, along with Catherine Austin Fitts, the investment analyst, I'm calling it the secret space program. We have been engaged in the secret space program since the end of World War II, when under Operation Paperclip, we brought thousands of Nazis into our country and ensconced them at our science institutions, our military bases, our mental institutions, our hospitals, and our universities. We gave them carte blanche, and since then, America has never been the same. And what I'm going to show tonight, I hope, is I'm going to start with above in how the secret space program is really set up. And then I will turn to the tiny world, the so below world, because they are definitely connected by the very ingenious scientists who are in charge of the secret space program. So let's start with our atmosphere. Many of us do not study science beyond high school, and even in high school probably we barely skim by. But I have grown exceedingly interested. I have a second degree in biology undergrad, but I never went on to grad school in science. I instead turned to other things. But now I'm full on for understanding how the science of our day is working. We all are here, not by accident, I do not believe. I believe that we have come to the earth with very specific goals in mind for our development. And I think that my great concern is that I want to protect that right to pursue our individual goals into the future. And I do believe that there are very powerful phalanxes at work today in science and in high finance, in many fields, who do not share that objective with me. I think they would like to see another humanity, a controlled humanity, a slave humanity, and that they are going to use electromagnetics and chemistry, or alchemical chemistry, you might say, in order to achieve that. And so far they're doing very well. They brought out the cell phone in tandem with the secret space program flying its chemical jets and spewing chemistry into the skies beyond the pollution we were already dealing with at an earthly level. And they are very ingenious in how they are using chemistry and electromagnetics to get inside our bodies and our genetics. So I will be talking about that in the second half of the talk. So just to remind you, there we are, teeny weeny us down there on the troposphere, and then up to the stratosphere. The stratosphere is where our jets fly. I was flying there this morning. And then the rockets go up there, and then there's the mesosphere, and on up to the ionosphere. And the ionosphere actually extends, I think it's from about 30 miles up in the sky, maybe 40, up to approximately 200-300. So the ionosphere is very important. It's part of our protective gear that we have around the planet. And the other part of our protective gear is, of course, the magnetosphere. And here we see the strands coming out of the magnetosphere, which connect our Earth with our sun, with our star. That's the Birkeland currents, that if you come tomorrow night to hear Chris Fontenot, you will hear him talk about the Birkeland currents and Alvin waves, which are exceedingly important to how our atmosphere has been completely turned into something that we're not familiar with. So then the other part of this macrocosm, this as above, would have to be the Earth's geomagnetic field. And here it is, according to Bruce Cathy. I don't know if anyone's heard of Bruce Cathy. He was a pilot and a mathematician in New Zealand who has now died, but he was a genius and was approached several times by British and American intelligence to come and work for them because he understood harmonics so well that they felt they needed his skills. Of course, he turned them down. He was a highly moral man. And here is something you can buy on the internet, a piece of software, whereby you will see exactly where these nodes and these magnetic lines are on the Earth. CERN is something I want to just address briefly. I could definitely talk about CERN, but CERN is very much impacting our magnetosphere. And for those who don't know what CERN is, it is a particle accelerator of great power on the border between France and Switzerland. And CERN is much more than that. But as I said, I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but I wanted you to see this. This is put out by BP. If I can get this to work. There we go.
May the 29th, 2017, Guys, you're looking at the magnetopause. This is the model of our Earth shields, and it's being generated by the 3 different satellites, or 4, that you see orbiting in that white circle, the GOS 15, 14, 13, and the South Korean COMS. You see those bendings right there, guys, both at the north and south poles of our magnetopause. It only occurs when CERN is running at very high power. Look at this. It's incredible. Now, they're not at universal time as you try to match the quakes and the pulses from both the magnetopause and from the USGS. They use Geneva, Switzerland time, a couple hours difference there, so remember that. Here's our pulsing, guys. Remember in the video before this, I said we saw 2 very high impact walls of solar wind speed come in. It matches all of this information. Again, look at the difference between UTC time and Geneva, Switzerland time, and you can see exactly what's happening. Now, what's different this year is they have the new linear accelerator in place. But look at this one they had to dump a few moments ago. Look in the right section right here. It looks like a star field. Unbelievable. But this is dumping the beams in the B section of the collider. This information here is critical. Pay attention to it. A lot of you have seen it in previous videos, but as the solar wind strikes the Earth shields, there's energy that's created that causes the auroras, different things like that. But notice that you have region 1, which is incoming, and region 2, which is outgoing energy. Now, when that happens, it creates ground currents in the Earth. Hall currents, Peterson currents. Notice that. Very important. Incoming and outgoing energy here. Now, why is CERN built underground in the northern hemisphere? You just saw it. To take advantage of these ground currents. Now, a few years ago, they launched a series of satellites. They went through what was called plasma tubes that connect the sun and the Earth. It has to do with our shields. It has to do with the placement of our planet in the orbit around our sun, and they're huge. This drawing does not really do it justice because some of the sizes, as we've seen the input come in, almost completely encircle our planet. But these tubes connect the Earth and the sun. And then what happens? As that energy is increased, the magnetic lines of force that we use for our compasses, that the whales and the birds use for navigation, they become these plasma tubes also. There's a tremendous amount of energy that's going into the core of our planet. CERN is situated exactly where they need to be to not only take energy from this to power their demonic machines, but they can actually manipulate, because remember, you had currents going in and going out, because in that connection with the Earth and the sun, they can pull in there and actually affect what we're seeing on the solar surface. Their new machine has put them well over 100,000 times as strong as far as their magnetic field compared to the Earth's magnetic field. Look, we saw the first pulse this afternoon to the left of this, caused a 6-point earthquake. Then another sudden pulse. Guys, this is not coronal mass ejections. This is not solar wind coming from a coronal hole. These are pulses that are being emitted. Look at the time between here and look at CERN. These people are on the verge of causing utter destruction. We're already in the period of solar minimum with weak shields. Now, if they're using the ability to tie into the entire magnetic fields that connect the Earth and the sun through these plasma tubes with a magnetic field that keeps the Earth in balance with the sun, but theirs is over 100,000 times stronger. They admit it on their website. Either way, this is not popular information. It cost me every video that I put up in 2015 over $700 as they hacked my channel. and removed everything in it that was heavily concentrated about CERN and the effects on our planet. The hacks came out of Paris, France, not far away. Guys, you're seeing a group of mad scientists about to utterly create chaos on our planet. If they're going to bring it down on me again, they might as well go ahead and get it over with. We're watching it, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.
So what BP is saying is what I want you to hear about the as above, the macrocosm, that at the same time the secret space program is operant now, and with a great deal of research going on, particularly into plasma physics, this could end up being a disaster because they are really moving parts of the Earth defense system in ways that are not utterly controllable. Now, just let me, I'll get you in a second.
Can you clarify what's going on here? I don't know what's going on.
This is CERN.
Well, so BP is saying what to whom?
He's simply...
BP is the BP oil company?
No, he's just a guy who calls himself BP.
Oh.
And he has done many videos on the physics of what is going on above the planet.
Okay, so it's okay.
Yeah, sorry about the BP.
I just didn't know who anybody was.
Right, and so here are the plasma tubes. If you were to look up one, this is what you would see if you were looking at a sunset. Now, plasma is it's a fourth state of matter, and it's sort of gas and fire together. And there are a great many experiments going on in our now ionized atmosphere. And when I say ionized, what I'm talking about is the history of HAARP, which all of you have probably heard that wonderful acronym, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, a very powerful ionospheric heater in Gakona, Alaska, that the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy ran experiments with, and Raytheon. Raytheon owns the patents to this day. They ran experiments on HAARP, with HAARP, on the ionosphere in order to see if they could draw power from the ionosphere. First they had to stimulate it because the ionosphere is full of ions, and what they did is they built a huge phased array antenna in Gakona, Alaska, acres and acres, and then were able to steer it to strike the ionosphere 400, 600 miles above in a certain area, stimulate it, pop the electrons off of atoms, turn those electrons into ions, positive and negative, and then those ions, now moving very rapidly, would then get hold of what BP mentioned as the magnetic lines of force, the Birkeland currents, and sort of spiral down into the Earth's atmosphere, which then would be activated and ionized. And the purpose of this was to make the atmosphere electric, to electrify it, to make it like a battery, like an antenna, so that many wireless operations, military in nature, could be undertaken. This is why the SDI program, some people in here are old enough to remember it, the Strategic Defense Initiative in the Reagan era from 1980 to 1988, why it was tabled. It went black. It disappeared because they didn't have the right atmosphere for the operations that they really wanted SDI to do. We were told it was a missile defense program, but it was much more. It was much more. But without the ionization of our atmosphere, they couldn't do half, not even a third of what they wanted to do. Now that's different. Since HAARP, the experiments were very successful. They have figured it out. They now have ionospheric heaters all over the Earth. Many of them are very small. You would not recognize them. Many of them are large and stationary. The others are mobile. And these ionospheric heaters are really weapons. These are Tesla's weapon that we have heard so much about. And now that they can do plasma experiments, and I personally think there are many reasons to do the plasma. You've got to really read about plasma. 99.999% of the universe is plasma. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that everything is sort of waiting for development. And if you have electromagnetism, you can create star systems, you can create star clusters, you can create fuel. I think the military is very much pursuing the possibility of plasma fuel in our atmosphere. And I'm talking about our atmosphere. I'm not talking about the stratosphere above us where the jets go and the rockets go. I'm talking about our atmosphere. There are lots of experiments going on now, and you're seeing them, but you don't know you're looking at it. You're looking at clouds you think are the same clouds you looked at 50 years ago, and they're not even close to those clouds. These are dry clouds. These are chemical clouds. If they have any moisture in them, it's very minimal. And then that is used, that particular plasma cloud structure that is up above us is used for moving weather systems, creating extreme weather. It's used for chemical experiments. It's used for electromagnetic experiments. It's used for directed energy weapon experiments. There is so much going on. So if you ever see something weird, like yesterday I happened to see, there's our sun behind a cloud bank in Olympia, Washington, and over about maybe 20 degrees is a sort of rainbow cloud, something or other, breaking through the clouds. Well, it can't be the sun, so what is it? Well, I just watch it and watch it and watch it, making no judgment, and eventually it sort of just goes away, just dissipates. So we need to become very acute observers of our sky just to see what our age is up to. We certainly cannot trust the mainstream media. And if you're still listening to CBS, NBC, ABC, CB, whatever, I've never owned a television. I'm from the 60s generation. We all knew it was mind control. And I never bought one. My kids, of course, hated me. They'd go over to other people's houses and watch their fill of TV, and I didn't mind, but I would not stand for it. And now we have the cell phones. I also don't own a cell phone, and no, I'm not a Luddite entirely, but I am partially. And so what I want to do in my life, I don't know about your life, but in my life, I really want to witness what is true. I would like to die with as few lies in my soul as possible. This is my great objective in life. And so I've come across an amazing array of lies, deception in the so-called climate change movement, the so-called the carbons taxes. All of this is a ruse and is not true. And because of my strong feeling on that, my status in my town has greatly changed among the community. So that's that. I'm still on the as above, right? You're following my metaphor here. Let's look at another one. This is part of the AI, and we all wonder about the AI. It's here. I mean, you know, banking is done with AI, state government is done with AI. There are many AI systems. But let's see about this one. This one is the adiabatic quantum AI computer known as D-Wave. And D-Wave is very important as a prototype of the type of computer that, if it's not already here, beyond D-Wave is coming very quickly. This is Jordy.
This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines.
An altar to an alien god. He is being, what we would hope, metaphoric. But on the other hand, I go back to the idea that I remember in high school in chemistry, which I despised partly because it was my father's field. I remember the chemistry professor emphasizing that nature abhors a vacuum. And when I heard this film with Geordie Rose speaking, I couldn't help but wonder if you have abdicated on your humanity, your conscience, your morality, what moves in? What enters you and begins to function through you? Nature abhors a vacuum, so I'm assuming that something occurs to people. And I don't know what it is. I can't prove that it's there, but certainly when Geordie said it was like an altar to an alien god, that is exactly how CERN looks at D-Wave, because D-Wave is running all the operations at CERN. I don't mean that someone is telling D-Wave what to do. I mean D-Wave is telling everyone at CERN today what to do. And this is how it will be with the AI computer.
Who programmed it?
Geordie.
Oh.
He's the, what's called the CTI, the Chief Technology, CTO, Technology
It just
Officer.
goes on its own then? Once it's programmed?
No, it's evolving.
Oh.
It's evolving in its own consciousness. So here, this follows that very nicely. This is also by a scientist named David Deutsch. Quantum computation will be the first technology that allows useful tasks to be performed in collaboration between parallel universes. Now, I don't think he is being metaphorical at all. Certainly, quantum physics and quantum mechanics have now let us know that there are parallel dimensions. String theory holds that there's a place where I'm giving a talk to a group of people just like you somewhere else. I don't know. It could very well be. Just because it's difficult to think about, given our lives and our daily lives, does not mean it cannot be true, as you well know. So this is what we're looking at also, are these artificial intelligence machines that evolve. And this is also part of the secret space program, very, very important part of it. Now, these are the 7 operations that I maintain have come from the ionized atmosphere that HAARP so nicely gained for the military-industrial intelligence complex. So we've got seven basic things going on up there. We've got weather engineering. Weather's very important. Yes, for control over the Earth, it's very important. But weather has been weaponized. So it is used as a political tool now. We can muscle other nations with the fear of drought, the fear of floods, the fear of earthquakes. And this is a good thing for a uniform space age that seeks domination over Earth first. Geoengineering is the same thing as weather engineering, but geoengineering goes much further. It goes into all the things I'm going to mention here. So chemical and electromagnetic experiments are going on up in our sky. Planetary geophysical operations are going on our Earth. Certainly the shoreline, a scientist came to see me the other day, who's an activist. She wanted to talk about what's happened in the Gulf since the BP oil spill and the introduction of core exit into the Gulf. And she had a lot of data. And we began to look at how that is really, at least for me, a geophysical operation, purposely done, was not an accident. No way was that an accident. So now the Gulf Coast is completely different. They've lost I don't know how many miles of coastline. And so there are things are being changed. California, fires that happened in California. The coastline of California and Oregon. Oregon's had a lot of things happen along the coastline. So again, I'm asking people to become alert and aware and good observers, not necessarily to draw immediate conclusions based on my book or anything, but to learn to look and really think things through of what anomaly really means in a world that is subject now to a space age. The next one is directed energy warfare operations. That goes without saying. I just read an article that the military has come out with a really cool laser fire weapon that can incinerate someone or anything within seconds. So this is going on. Surveillance and neural operations, I might as well include those under directed energy weapons. Surveillance, yes, you know, they can read postage stamp, etc. from space. Neural operations would mean mind control, would mean control over the brain, control over the nervous system, control over emotions. And that, as long as you have the frequencies and the tool by which to focus and steer toward a target, is a done deal. They've had that since the 50s. Then the biological transhumanism operations, those are the ones I'm writing this next book on, synthetic biology and transhumanism. In what that means for those who don't understand transhumanism is basically that humanity, that those with the money and the wherewithal and the knowledge of how to do this on a mass scale. Not talking about picking a few unique individuals out and seeing what you can make of them, enhance them for a future use by a few bad people. No, I'm talking about mass evolution at the hands of someone who understands how to wield the weapons of chemistry and radio frequency or microwaves. And this changing human beings in order to make them more acquiescent, amenable to remote directions, remote programming, coming in through their nervous system, coming in through microwave hearing, through the V2K, the voice-to-skull technology. All of this is very intriguing to the powers that be, and we are basically their guinea pigs. And the final one is pretty unique, detection obscuration of exotic propulsion systems. There seem to be some sort of craft hiding in various plasma clouds that are generated, and some of them are triangular and look very much like the Aurora or the TR-3B. You know, in other words, American craft that certainly have some sort of ability to hover and which means anti-gravity technology. So, but there are others hiding in the clouds that seem to be able to produce plasma clouds at will. And I don't really know what those are or where they're from. You know, I retain an open mind. So these are the 7 operations going on in our skies today that most people just seem to be absolutely oblivious to. Just to remind you, the term chemtrails is not a conspiracy term. It belonged to the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1990. It is borrowed from the U.S. Air Force. This book came out. This is a U.S. Air Force book that Owning the Weather by 2025, and it has in it this enigmatic little chart that basically proves that in 1990 all of this was already going on, and that would include directed energy weapons, that would include what do they call it here, the jets that are flying, aerospace delivery vehicles, artificial hemispheric mirrors. Everything that we have in our skies today was envisioned in 2020, and of course they said that they would have this by 2025. They always give you a date that's far in the future of when you really are going to have to experience it. So you can find all that in the book that I just showed you, Weather as a Force Multiplier. It's on the net. Everything's in open source, folks. I didn't have to do a FOIA on anything that is in either of my books because I knew a FOIA would be a waste of my time. And I was able to put together many military documents, papers, patents. All of it's there. It just takes a lot of time. That's all it takes. Let's see, what's that? I just put this here to sort of go over some history of the weather. This is a patent came out in a paper that came out in 2015 about the systematic changes in cloud radiative forcing with aerosol loading for deep clouds in the tropics. In other words, we're making clouds with chemistry. And with radio frequency, and that's what that paper is about. You can see it for yourself. And here we know this one well, before, during, and after. Clouds look in a variety of ways. Here, when you see that serration, that rhythmic serration, you're looking at clouds that are being pulsed with frequency for some sort of weather operation, I would assume. Here you can see barium by the coloration of the cloud. Maybe some lithium is in there, maybe some copper. You know, after you've been in it, I've been in this movement now about 8 years, so you get pretty good at the color differentiation of what metals you're looking at. Then you notice the texture of the clouds. That's how you know that they're really not simply particulates and water. They actually are just, they're very chemical clouds. Here's what lithium at sunset would look like. Lithium, as you know, is, they use it in bipolar people, and it is a psychotropic. So, gee whiz, why are those rockets launching from Wallops Base back on the East Coast and smearing New York City and Syracuse with lithium? What's going on there?
What they do as a psychotropic?
They affect your moods. This is the fire from Santa Rosa from space. All the smoke, the mixture of carbon, all of this is not just about an accidental fire. Actually, I think that we'll be seeing a lot of fires as they experiment with the chemical contribution of fire to what's already going on in the atmosphere. This is Jim Lee's map that he has at his site. It's an interactive map. I highly recommend you check it out. This is where you can see all the radar installations we have across the country. We call them NexRads. We have ionosphere heaters all over. There are a lot of things that Jim has taken the trouble to line up so we can understand that we're basically a military installation. Okay, so mainly I would say if you are interested in doing something to find out where you stand with all of this, you might clip a little piece of your hair and take it to someone who does heavy metal testing. A lot of naturopaths do. I don't know about doctors. I haven't seen a doctor for decades. But I think you would be interested to see what kind of metals you have in your body. Because if you have metals in your body, and I'm sure you do, they are all on a nano scale. They are all very tiny, which means they're very hard to get rid of if they're so tiny. Your urine will not get rid of them, your feces will not get rid of them, your sweat will not get rid of them. So that would be a first step I would highly recommend to see where you stand with all of this if you were so interested. And then I have down here the spraying, I have down the fracking, this same chemical formula, notice how similar it is injected into a variety of so-called, well, fracking for sure, also wind farms underneath wind turbines. By the way, Europe is shutting down thousands of wind turbine farms.
Why?
The real reason, I don't know. They say they're not making money, but I kind of have my doubts that it might be something else. Because all of these are calibrated to work together to force a kind of, I suppose you'd say, a pulsating, ionized atmosphere loaded with heavy metals that can be used for weather operations, for directed energy weapon operations such as 9/11. There are many things you could do if you could calibrate the same chemical signature with a variety of regional or perhaps even complete geophysical Earth places. I don't know. But I know that that's how it works. And then the final one here is the rockets. The rockets have the same chemical signature as the jets. Here's your jet delivery system. We all know it very well. And here we have rockets. This is another delivery system. I took this from Elon Musk.
Good evening from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, and welcome to the webcast of the SAOCOM 1A mission out of our West Coast launch site at Space Launch Complex 4E, located at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. My name is Tom Perderio, and I'm a firmware engineer here at SpaceX, and I'll be your host for this evening. Tonight, we'll be placing the SAOCOM 1A Earth observation satellite into a low Earth...
Here is a sounding rocket launch at sunset. I know you've probably seen illustrations of this as people say, oh, it's so beautiful. I guess I'd have to say that it's not beautiful to me because I know too much of what's in it and that we're going to be breathing that. Here, this is kind of what you're seeing in the rocket launches, metal oxide, space clouds, MOSC. These are the particulates, the nanoparticles that are released in the stratosphere, and then many of them fall down to the Earth to be breathed, and they go into our soil. Like, why is California's soil turning so alkaline, and why are the oceans turning so acid? It is because of the chemicals that are being delivered into our atmosphere for military operations, yes, but I do believe that we are more than just collateral damage of military operations. I believe that we are part of the project, and our health concerns are part of the project, and that they want to see what happens to us, how many of us can evolve in a radioactive environment, a heavy metal environment, how many of us can evolve and continue to live relatively healthily when we have pathogens in our bodies and all sorts of things. I think they're very interested in that, and I think they hack into people's hospital and clinic records. So rocket exhaust is basically what's known as dusty plasma, and we're breathing that in. Here's a quote by Rosalie Bertell, the epidemiologist, that was so great and wrote a book that is a great book, Planet Earth, The Latest Weapon of War, a critical study into the military and the environment. The ability of the HARP/Space Lab/rocket combination to deliver very large amounts of energy comparable to a nuclear bomb anywhere on Earth via laser and particle beams is frightening. So something happened when Trump entered office, and this is how I see it, and this is just me. This is not from any other book. This is me. Three things happened that I noticed right away, because of course I'm interested in geoengineering and the planet. So the first thing is, I noticed that there were a lot of articles coming out in New York Times, Washington Post, etc., about geoengineering experiments. They trotted out their favorite geoengineer, David Keith, and it was as if it were an announcement. Yup, too bad, we're going to have to use geoengineering. Too bad. Well, geoengineering has been going on for 2 decades in our skies. Clifford Carnicom, independent scientist who used to work for DoD, Department of Defense, was watching them in the mid-90s and the late 90s and collecting data in his HEPA filter and from precipitation, from snowfall and rain and dew in northern New Mexico. So we've had it for 2 decades, and we've had many experiments. We've had the hurricanes, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina, Fukushima, the Haiti one. Indonesia has had countless weather things happen to it. Now recently we've had a lot of floods in Europe. So to me, they're all experiments that have been run on the weather to use it as a weapon of war, as the military likes to call it, a force multiplier. Weather as a force multiplier. And indeed, it is a force multiplier. So to bring out the geoengineering in Trump's pretty much his 2nd or 3rd week in office was to me a milestone. Now I'll go to the next one and then I'll explain all 3. Next, what did Trump do? Next, we heard about the National Space Council. We used to have it before, but he reenacted it. He revived it, the Space Council. And that is run by Vice President Pence. And then recently, as you know, the latest is the Space Force. And that too was a presidential moment. So with all 3 of these, it appears to me that if for no other reason, President Trump has been chosen by those who are running the space program, and he certainly is not. Let me make that very clear. Presidents only last at the most 8 years. This space program has been running for over half a century. So he was chosen to take us into the next age. That's how I see it. It'll be an age of geoengineering. It's an age of the National Space Council. It's an age of the Space Force. We have entered a space age, and he is now beginning to accustom us to that fact. Who's running the space age? Well, you know, I'm asked that a lot. My guess is, how about these two top defense contractors? Lockheed Martin, I know, runs and owns the space fence that I wrote about in the second book. And Raytheon owns the HARP patents. Both of these defense corporations, these military industrial complex players, are involved in every business you can possibly imagine. They have taken corporate diversification to a whole new level. So they're very powerful. There are victims of mind control who have worked for those corporations, who have come out and been whistleblowers over the last 30 or 40 years. Now here's Lockheed Martin. I don't know if I'm going to play the whole thing. Suffice it to say that when Clifford Carnicom and I watched this video, we realized that everything about the space fence program is in this. But this will give you an idea of how militarized our Earth is for this weaponizing of the planet. And we're plugged into this, by the way, and I'll be explaining that. I'm going to start right away.
Space is no longer a vast, empty void. Unprecedented quantities of new satellites, derelict satellites, and debris litter the skies, posing an imminent threat to America's space assets. Lockheed Martin's Space Fence System is a ground-based system of S-band radars designed to greatly enhance the Air Force space surveillance network. It provides unprecedented sensitivity, coverage, and tracking accuracy, and contributes to key mission threads with the ability to detect, track, and catalog small objects in low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, and geosynchronous orbit. In a word, Space Fence will revolutionize space situational awareness. It offers assured surveillance coverage for improved custody and features the capability to develop long arc tracks for accurate initial orbit determination and differential correction, while simultaneously maintaining a persistent surveillance volume. In today's ever-expanding space environment, Space Fence improves the accuracy and timeliness for association, propagation, and orbit improvement. It features an open architecture net-centric design. The closely coupled radar signal processing and mission processing suite improves accuracy, discrimination, and timeliness for detection of closely spaced objects, breakups, maneuvers, lost object location, launch, attitude change, and conjunction assessment. Space Fence not only tracks objects, but can precisely determine their projected orbit. This allows operators to reconstruct recent events, such as collisions or satellite breakups, and accurately predict future events. For high-interest objects, a microfence can be electronically constructed to gather more track data, focusing radar resources specifically on that object, providing more timely and accurate information. The Space Fence system includes up to 2 minimally manned radar sites, mission processing, and the system operations functionality. Each radar site features a design boasting closely spaced but separate transmit and receive arrays that are mission optimized for high availability and low lifetime support costs, including prime power. The dual aperture configuration offers efficiency and affordability. Each array is environmentally protected by a pressurized, electronically transparent radome. The arrays are continuously calibrated in the background, providing a higher degree of accuracy. Transmit and receive LRUs can be replaced while the radar is operating. The arrays, as well as the signal and mission processing suites, are fully scalable to fit any mission design. Array scalability is delivered using 3 low-cost, highly producible building blocks which permit easy growth capability. And by optimizing a second site with a smaller array and margin for future capability growth, the radar sites are cost-effective as well as powerful. As the Earth spins, the location of these radar sites provides assured coverage, and this coverage closes current coverage gaps, particularly in the southern hemisphere. The space fence system is net-centric and seamlessly integrated into the existing space surveillance network, providing services to external users such as JSPOC and coordinating handoffs to other SSN sites. It is designed for efficiency and full capability while minimizing bandwidth needs. The Space Fence system features a unique mission processor that utilizes the Air Force Space Command's A9 Astro Standards algorithms for high-confidence space track processing, low risk, and cost-effectiveness. The radar architecture is based on digital beamforming. This capability permits tremendous user-defined flexibility to customize volume surveillance and track sectors instantaneously without impacting routine surveillance functions. It has simultaneous search and track functions, detects significant UCTs, breakups, and maneuvers, and the flexible design supports operational resource allocation. Many of these operations are automated through machine-to-machine interfaces. This automation, along with user-defined operational picture displays, contextual GUIs, and unqueued LEO surveillance, reduces operator burden. The Space Fence team is comprised of Lockheed Martin, as well as AMEC, and General Dynamics Satcom Technologies. This partnership offers best-of-brand S-band radar, mission system and orbital mechanics, and construction expertise with superior responsiveness and transparency. Space Fence is a robust, flexible, advanced end-to-end system with net-centric communication, mission processing, enhanced cataloging capability, global coverage, and interoperability. It will meet the warfighter's operational needs, revolutionize space situational awareness, and will forever change the way we see the universe.
That is the space age as well, the militarized one that we have. Basically, that's it. Lockheed Martin has tremendous power. Here is the radar. The S-band is particularly pernicious and powerful as a radar unit. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, there's somebody singing somewhere. All this will show is how you can use plasma to produce a shield in space or on the Earth. One of the primary units to protect the S-band. because now we're going to move into tiny world. Here's General David Petraeus. Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters, all connected to the next generation internet using abundant, low-cost, and high-power computing. Okay, so what does he mean with all that verbiage? So this is from Carnicom Institute, looking at the delivery system, basically. Geoengineering and bioengineering really are very closely interconnected. So you have the food, agriculture, and the biosphere from geoengineering, and then you have the health, biology, and pathology from the bioengineering. All of it is environmental because we're all breathing the air, we're drinking the water, we're eating foods from the soil, we're experiencing the sunlight such as it is, and we are experiencing an electromagnetic wireless world now, that our conveniences and our comforts and our entertainment necessity has brought upon us. So just geoengineering and bioengineering go together. Here's some symptoms that some people are having. There are all kinds of symptoms here. I'm not going to pretend that they're all caused by what we're breathing, but certainly it is a new level of non-health in the United States. You can just take a little peek at it. And all of this, I believe, is due to our lungs are not taking in the oxygen that they should be taking into our bloodstream because they are clogged and blocked with nanoparticles. And it's also due to our struggling immune system that simply does not recognize all of this genetically engineered material that is swimming in our bloodstream and that doctors know nothing about, or at least are not talking about. You can take all the drugs in the world and the doctor can get as many perks as possible from Big Pharma for all those drugs, but they will not fix this problem of nanoparticles in the body. This is up to us now. We are the test tubes in a massive lab experiment going on in our atmosphere. And we are the ones who will suffer, pay for it with our hard-earned money, and we must come to terms with figuring out what to do about it. And there are many people I'm in touch with who are working on this night and day. Just citizens like you and me, not particularly PhDs or doctors. But I have learned not to trust expertise in America. Can you see why? So there's another picture. This was a program, you might have seen it. I don't have a TV, so I didn't see it. Under the Dome, where suddenly people wake up one morning in Chester, wherever it was, and oh my God, they're cut off from everybody. They're in the dome. Well, that's our condition. And here's a picture of our dome. It's called a wireless radio frequency microwave dome. And we live in that. And that's why we're plugged in. And the things we're breathing in that I'm going to show you now, they are the things that have plugged us into it. And I mean plugged in. I'm not being metaphoric here. I mean it's as if you stuck your 2 fingers in a light socket. We are plugged in, period, because of the nanoparticles, the nano entities that are now swimming in our bloodstream and in our brains, because they can easily go past the blood-brain barrier. Now, this is what, I like this is what Julian Assange calls them.
Measurements, we are emanating constantly. And so if you collect those together, you can effectively triangulate someone's activities and behavior. And I don't think by chopping out many of them, or adding kind of chaff, cover, that you can make that much of a difference. And increasingly it's less. And in terms of Internet of Things, there's research prototypes now, which I assume are being used by intelligence agencies, of very small electronic circuits that you can just put in paper or put in paint or on the walls that are powered by the GSM stations. And they operate as the GSM radio wave passes through them. It gives them enough power for a very small amount of time to do things. So obviously that tendency is going to continue. It's not like the Internet of Things. It's if you like, intelligent evil dust scattered everywhere, like confetti in everything. So I think it's increasingly hard for human beings to work out how to deal with that. And the only way I can see is that we've got to securitize this problem. Computer security industry is it's been engaged in outrageous securitization for a very long period of time, hyping up threats, etc. I get how the game is played. It needs to be securitized in a different way. We need to securitize by securitize I mean you turn something into a threat and thereby change behavior or get economic gain from it. So we need to securitize the threat to elites by these developments. The people who run these companies, it's a threat to them. It's a threat to the most powerful people in society. And to eliminate the notion that there's a place that powerful people can hide from, or skilled people can hide from this phenomenon. And that's the way to get all those people who have an ability to make a difference, to make a difference.
Okay, we're good.
So basically, the thing I wanted you to see was the evil, intelligent dust. And that is the smart dust, the nanobots, the nanostructures that have been genetically engineered, the sensors that are being dumped by the trillions in the stratosphere, many of which fall to Earth and we breathe in, and they're in our bloodstream and in our brains as well. That initially, when I first encountered all this and was able to document it, that yeah, this is true, I thought that we were just collateral damage to a military operation that they couldn't do without these nanoscale chaff. They like to call it chaff, to sort of put it all together. But I have changed my mind on that, and I do believe that they are interested to see what this does to us in our bodies, and that we are the first generation that has had it, and now the generations coming, their idea would be that those generations will do better than we have. So that's kind of where I'm at with that right now. We are not just collateral damage. So the Ebner effect says, basically, I know next to nothing about it, it will be in the next book, I'll learn a lot between now and then, but basically that electromagnetics can alter a species in one generation. So, could that be what's going on? Maybe. Here are some words I think you need to memorize, not tonight. There will be no test at the end of this. But you need to come to really learn what a hertz is, what the various hertz are that climb. You don't need to memorize the exponents of them, but certainly the difference between a gigahertz and a hertz. A gigahertz is 1 billion cycles per second. Can you get hold of that? 1 billion cycles per second. That's the 5G. That's what it does. 1 billion cycles per second compared to 1 hertz, 1 cycle per second. And I'll remind you that our Schumann resonance, which is our natural innate resonant hertz is 7.8. Compare 7.8 with 1 billion cycles per second, and you can get an idea of the problem that we're going to face with the 5G, which is resonating near our home, resonating as it communicates with our Internet of Things, our dishwasher talking to our dryer, talking to our car, talking to our phone, talking to, maybe you even have decided to have one of those cool tattoos that also will open doors for you and make your life so convenient. So I recommend you learn this nomenclature here, because you're going to need it, especially if you're going to start measuring your radio frequency and the outputs in your house and all that. This is what is called the NBIC, the Nano Bio Info Cogno formula, I guess you'd call it, for the technocracy. This is supposedly going to make us have really smart cities. And we're going to be really, well, pretty stupid in the smart cities, but our city is going to take care of us because it's going to be so smart. It's going to be nano in our bodies. It's going to be biological in our bodies. It's going to provide information, two-way information from our bodies to fusion centers, which we have across the country. The fusion centers will then shoot that information that's coming from your body and my body to maybe, some research lab somewhere that's studying that sort of thing. And then there's the cogno, which is, of course, mind control. Absolute control over our thinking and our feelings. And I've been saying to people, I'll say it now, if you find yourself following threads of thought and feeling or emotion, feeling and emotion are not the same, that is not like you, it's something you don't really do. Maybe it's really dark, maybe it's sexual, whatever it is. If you feel it's not really you, you must consider that it may not be you, that it's piping in through your cell phone, which is, as I've told you, a military weapon system, and you should not fall for it. You should not necessarily go to a doctor who will write it up, and that will be hacked into. I mean, I'm really serious. I feel like I live in Nazi Germany. Doesn't it sound like it? Taking all these precautions now with authoritative institutions that I'm not really sure who's running them, and I'm not sure quite what they should know about me. Okay, so here's some more. These are other things you learned them in high school. Maybe you failed that part of the test, but you should learn these now. A nanometer is one billionth of a meter. The micrometer, with that cute little umlaut there, that little, I don't remember what in Greek that is. Does anybody remember?
Mu.
Mu, thank you. With that little mu there. Micrometer is one millionth of a meter. A millimeter is one thousandth of a meter. A centimeter, 1/100th. We pretty much know centimeters. Anybody who's built anything knows centimeters. And then the meter. Okay. So the rings of Saturn are made of dusty plasma. I only bring that up because of the cover of my latest book, where I have planet Earth surrounded by a ring. And that ring is the heavy metals that are being dumped up in the stratosphere. Some of them are falling down here and we're breathing them in, yes, and they're going in the soil and they're going in the water. But some of them are actually getting caught up in the centrifugal force of the Earth and gradually settling over the equator, around the equator, in a ring very much like Saturn. And this ring is a communication element, I believe, of the future space age. It's not all there yet, but they're working on it. Speaking of turning, let's look at this toroid of the cold dusty plasma. And then here's GEMS, MEMS and NEMS. These are, let's see if I remember, let's see, electromechanical sensors. These are the sensors that we're breathing in. And they go all the way down to the nano sensor. Here's the quantum dot tagging. If they want to know where you are, they can tag you with something that you won't be able to see, but they'll be able to pick up, like an RFID reader in a way. Quantum dot tagging, that also we're breathing in. And this will give you an idea of the smart dust.
But in the future, every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Because every street and every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Dr. Chris Piester calls it smart dust.
A smart dust particle, or mote, is a wireless sensor with sensing, computation, communication, and power in one package.
These all-in-one microcomputers will be small, very small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice. And we've shown that we can make the circuitry small enough and light enough that eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network that can help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
Smart cities in the future will take this low-power, inexpensive, small technology and basically distribute it everywhere.
These tiny computers record information about their surroundings, information they can send to other computers or to you. Smart dust on the tracks will monitor your commuter train so you know if it's running late. Potholes will be able to report themselves and warn your car, and you'll never have to wait for a radio traffic report again.
They're monitoring the flow of traffic and giving you alerts about what route is the right way to go to keep the traffic moving.
Bridges will get a coating of smart dust.
Good bit. Okay, and then here's Ken Williams gave us a picture of some of these little guys swimming in our blood. Looks kind of like a Christmas ornament, doesn't it? Oh, I like this part. Yeah, creepy crawly all the way down our nerves, our axons, our dendrites. There it is. Okay, so here's the nanos. They're in pharmaceuticals, they're in pesticides, they're in flavors and aromas, gelatin, viscosifying things. Anything that requires thickening, like smoothies, beware, because they may have nanoparticles in them. They do not need to list the nanoparticles. Now, what are the nanoparticles made of? Well, they're made from metals on the periodic table. So, oh, and sunscreen. Bad news. All metal. Okay, so then here's the scientists. I'm not going to read this. I want to get to the 5G. But here you see that scientists, this is a very hot field for someone going into science in university. Food, yeah. I recommend you get a little 60-powered microscope on the net. It's only $7 last I checked. I have one. It has an infrared light. No, that's not right. It has a UV light and it has an LED light on it. And I sometimes amuse myself by going to the supermarket or the co-op organic food and looking at the fruit and seeing the millions of fibers on everything, okay? So there's another picture of a nano little guy. Here's another picture of a nano little guy. Another picture. Another picture. looks like a circuit board. And here we come to Morgellons, where you have these, as Clifford calls them, environmental fibers. And then magnified, they look a little different. And then they look even more different. And then on the skin, they look something like that when they first appear. Later, they will form caverns that look a lot like strep to me. They have a lip around them, and then there'll be fibers sticking out of them, usually, I think, white, black, and blue, or I may have that color coding wrong, but they are color-coded. And each one of them is genetically engineered to do something different. But one thing they will all do when they stick their little heads out of Morgellons sores is if you get near a toaster oven or your cell phone, they'll go nuts. They'll just they'll wave all over because they are programmed to love microwaves and radio frequency. There's a filament. And here is the heavy metals, aluminum. This is just a water testing that went on in the lab. Aluminum, barium, calcium, chromium, copper. I can't read them all. Lead, magnesium, manganese. Way sky high. That's why I said to just cut a little piece of your hair and have it tested. And then we get down to cyclotron resonance. And basically, we are resonant beings. And what that means is if, it's kind of like, remember that story about the bridge? That soldiers, when they would march across the bridge, would not march all in rhythm. They would march with a different, because otherwise the bridge would crack and collapse. That's kind of like our bodies. We resonate with the Earth, which is the Schumann resonance, 7.83. It is now, the Schumann resonance is no longer 7.83, but it does fluctuate, so we don't need to get too scared. Last I checked, it was at 13. Because of all the experimentation going on with CERN and whatever else is operating in the Schumann well that is known as our atmosphere. But the cyclotron resonance is, if they pulse us with a pulse, let's think for a minute about Ferguson, Missouri. Remember the boy that was killed there? Black boy. And then it was all suddenly a racist thing. I noticed that at the beginning the citizens were, well, they were upset, rightfully so. But they suddenly in 2 or 3 days, I can't remember right now, they just became violent. I mean, really violent, sort of like Rodney King violent from the very ancient days. Is it possible that they were being pulsed with the frequency for violence? Because violence has a frequency. So I don't know the answer to that, but I am now alerted to the possibility because we are resonant beings and the military-industrial intelligence complex knows all our frequencies. And our frequencies are within range of each other's. We're not that individual in these emotions and certain thoughts. So, something to think about. Here is a perfect illustration of what happens in the skies, harmonic resonance manipulation. Resonance, this is something we need to become familiar with, so I recommend that you see this film. It's on the internet, it's free. Resonance, beings of frequency. It's an excellent film. And I think you'll understand much more what it is to live in a world of frequencies, because everything is frequency. Now we turn to 5G. All right. So, I want to read something. about 5G. Are we doing okay? I have 25 till 9. We're okay? All right. So I'm going to spend hopefully about 20 minutes on this. First thing I want to read is, see if it's here. Okay, let's see. I got too many notes. Okay, so what I'm going to concentrate on may sound, yeah, it'll sound a little technical to you, but I think you'll get it. You will have a sense of why I'm not particularly that interested in a lot of the articles. I went through about 100 of the articles I've saved to look at, and I'm really not that interested in them. I had a long conversation with a chemist in Berlin named Harold Kautzwelle. And Harold Kautzwelle. And Harold is a real out-of-the-box thinker. And by the time we finished, I understood what he was saying. And so I'm going to concentrate on that. Right now, I'm looking really desperately for the one on the weather, which has to do with it, but I'll just leave it. All right. So the thing that the 5G is really good at is beam forming and beam steering. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Well, that's what HARP was good at. That was what made HARP so unusual, is it could do beam forming and beam steering. And guess what? HARP is a phased array antenna. And guess what 5G is? It's a phased array antenna. Now, so what's the big deal about phased array? Well, there's a very big deal about phased array. If you at all have the possibility in your mind that 5G could be used to target human populations. So let's concentrate on that. We'll see what we pick up. So this is from Wayne Ellinger. He's quite a bright guy. He's an electrical engineer. You know that this beam forming and multiple input, multiple output, it's called MIMO, duplexing will exactly facilitate the nanotechnology, the nanobioconstructs that are in our bodies. It's the waves traveling in the multi-3D that make biological microconstructs very easy. Duplexing lets them hide better and cross-communicate in stealth modes. This hints at phase conjugate mirror theory, which is where one can now completely resend a signal complex in direct opposition, thereby affecting things in different ways. Magically, it appears that all this tech can be used as a weapon against itself, especially phase conjugate mirroring. The HARP-based tech in use now and in the future is puny compared to what it was in the far past. A simple form of phase conjugate mirroring can also purify and detoxify heavy and light metals in vivo. In other words, this could be used for good, but it's probably not going to be. The early Tesla earthquake machine patent is only a small sample of Tesla's many different embodiments and represents an oscillating resonance in longitudinal waves traveling faster than light with instantaneous transmission in real time. By this example, phase reversal is simple and as easy as placing a mirror in line with the source. Millimeter waves, which is what 5G have in them, are in full use in airport scanners that can and do image hidden materials have to do with giving full detail of hidden materials in your body or on your body. Now all this is hidden to hide the real possibilities of millimeter technology. I don't know if you know that, but they say regarding these little tiny phased array antennas, they're in two parts. They're in the phones, the 5G phone. There are 4 of them in each phone. And then there's another type of phased array antenna in the small antennas in your neighborhood. Now I don't know quite, I know there are people here who are pursuing this very deeply, and you'll know in your model city, Sacramento, what neighborhoods have been set up in what way. If you can get that data, that would be very helpful. But if you can, if the phased array is fully used, it will send signals back and forth, and it can be then used to target whole households through the IoT, through the Internet of Things. Then here he says, the radar used the same gigahertz range by way of a klystron and also an amplitron 2, a system used in NEXRADs. And do you know the NEXRADs are those big golf ball looking things? That's how we move weather systems across the United States, is by using the NEXRADs. And it's also used in satellite tracking. So when radar was implemented, the beam could only ping metal and return a signal to the dish. There was no penetration effect, as that would diminish the power of the beam. So they say there's no penetration of it only goes down 0.1, I think it is, millimeter into your skin. But that is a lie. And it does penetrate bodies. So what's the big deal with the trees and cutting the trees down and getting rid of the leaves? Because they're blocking the movement of the millimeter waves. That's a question you need to ask. Also, why so many antennas, given that, yes, millimeter waves are very powerful and have a very short duration. But is it simply that they're not able to penetrate matter? That appears to not be true. And I just went through a drama today at the airport to not be sent through the millimeter wave machine, where they humiliate you and make you stand and wait for a long time before a female agent will come and pat you down. The understanding of what millimeter wave can and can't do, I think we've been lied to. I think it is definitely penetrating. But by using a phased array antenna, that penetration will be greater. Because the phased array is many parts to it that can move things in different directions. So let me just get Harold's out now, just one comment, and then I'll close on that. So the skin, you remember that we have coiled helical antennas in our sweat glands, our sweat ducts, all over our skin. So that would be one of the first signs you would feel with the 5G. Also, the 5G, the millimeter wave is very close to the terahertz. And that's important to remember. The terahertz is just a little tinier than the 5G. So Harold says the following. What follows are my notes. That's me. Beginning with 5G's parallel structuring to nature's dynamic morphogenetic field, which means it can be used to engineer transhumanism on an individual basis, given that it is dynamic and not static, given that they can focus millimeter waves on each person, along with polarized light and phased laser quality alignment. Phased array antennas mean laser quality in-phase light signals that zero in on individuals that are being targeted. 5G uses full duplex signals. Normal communication devices need upload and download on 2 different frequency bands that must run synchronized or they interfere with each other. 5G runs along one channel, splitting it into horizontal, which is download, polarized light, and vertical, which is upload, polarized light. Thus, they don't interfere. They are full duplex. Polarized light is 10 times more bioavailable than non-polarized light because cell communication runs on polarized light. Non-polarized light is not recognized as a biological wave. Phased array technology produces signals that are phased, which means laser quality. And when those signals are pulsed, like data transmission running on pulsed signals, especially wireless, the pulsed laser quality signals create longitudinal waveforms, not transverse standing waves or scalar waves. In this way, 5G gets full biological access quality. With millimeter waves, one can build entire hub antenna phones into a microchip. To downsize the phased array antenna, all that is needed is the wavelength. This is why the frequency has to be so high for the antennas. All computer and 5G technology is multi-layered, from the consumer agency front end and a non-human back end. Whether you're thinking AI, alien, or demonic. Processors communicate with each other on a scalar level. Textured microchips are multi-layered, reflecting light frequencies and wavelengths. Laser inside the chip produces standing waves, and with pulse signals you immediately enter the scalar realm. Thus will your chip be accessed by phased array antennas and satellites, and even synchronize with other individuals' chips. So let's take a look at this. This is the 5G that is in the phone, and there are 4 of these piled up. These are phased array antennas, just to show you that they don't have to be big. And a lot of this, because of the resonance, it's not about power. It's not about watts, it's not about amps. It's about frequency. It's about the pulsing of frequencies at ELF, ULF, extra low frequency, ultra low frequency. This, with the human body, it's not necessarily the power level. It's the pulsing and what our bodies resonate to. Take, for example, our calcium ion channels. These are hugely important for good health. They have a certain frequency, and if that frequency is changed, well then dishealth is inevitable. So that's the key to this, is you're thinking, yeah, okay, your cell phone already, to me, is a problem, but the 5G, because it is morphogenetically resonant with our biological body, they can do a lot of things to us. And my guess is they're going to. So this is another one here, chip texture. A laser in one layer of the chip can be made to produce standing waves. It's too late for me to go into scalar technology, but let's take a look at this. Thought-controlled nanoscale robots in a living host. This is an article, a paper actually, put out by the people listed there. We report a new type of brain-machine interface enabling a human operator to control nanometer-sized robots inside a living animal by brain activity. Recorded EEG patterns are recognized online by an algorithm, which in turn controls the state of an electromagnetic field. The field induces the local hearing of billions of mechanically actuating DNA origami robots tethered to metal nanoparticles, leading to their reversible activation and subsequent exposure of a bioactive payload. As a proof of principle, we demonstrate activation of DNA robots to cause a cellular effect inside the insect, blah, blah, blah. This paper just came out. You see, it was 2016. I only saw it a few weeks ago. I don't know where it was, but I think I rest my case here. I rest my case with this paper. Let's see what this is. Is it moving? No. This is Verizon.
Being a Verizon engineer is about doing things right. And there's no shortcut to the right way. So when we roll out the nation's first 5G network, it'll be because we were the first to install millions of miles of fiber optics. And we'll be the first to upgrade the towers and put up the small cells that will power the smart cities of the future. When I started at Verizon, I knew I was joining a team that was pushing the industry forward. Now, with the launch of the only 5G ultra-wideband network, we're doing it again. This time, changing the way we learn, work, and live. And I'll always be proud that we're not just building America's first 5G network, we're doing it right.
Okay, 5G standard. Here, it's entirely about power, so they get us to concentrate on the power, and we don't concentrate on the resonance factor, on the frequency factor, the pulsing factor. Data rates of tens of megabytes per second for tens of thousands of users, yeah. Data rates of 100 megabytes per second for metropolitan areas, yeah. 1 gigabyte per second simultaneously to many workers on the same office floor, yeah. Hundreds of thousands of simultaneous connections for wireless sensors, spectral efficiency significantly enhanced beyond 4G networks, improved coverage, signaling, and significantly reduced latency, blah, blah, blah. And then 300,000 mini towers, and we haven't even talked about the satellites up above. Then we have the Internet of Things. Note this very good little illustration. See the role this Internet of Things has with you. It's all resonating in you. I don't know about those little computers and things. Don't think they're our friends. Then we have, this is from stop5g.net. He's very committed. towers. This one is interesting, this angle, because it's also those LED lights up there, hidden in the street lamps. Beware, beware. Another tower, or antenna, millimeter waves, at the airport. And there you see the steering mechanism versus the wide arcing of the old 4G. Another graphic kind of how you would look at it. And then of course the truth, which is it's like I think it's called the ADM, this weapon system. It is the same frequency, the 5G. And then here we have, this is I told you about that weapon, the laser-guided lightning weapon. That's the latest. Very fun. And this is us, living in a world of waves, with frequencies of probably entities we don't even know exist, because our frequency band is simply not able to perceive them. So we have to consider that nature abhors a vacuum. 5G, finally Nikola Tesla. Yeah. Good man, badly treated. And there's a list of people, and here is the person I wanted to point out. Sorry, I don't have my little thing, I forgot to get it out. This right here is who I recommend. He's not the only person experimenting, but he is the most organized experimenter on looking at magnetic fields. He's a former electrical engineer. He's looking at magnetic fields and their impact on the nanoscale entities that we have in our bodies. He's having great success. And he's someone worth checking out. And then I recommend these other sites for varying reasons. And there are more. There are many more, but I kind of have this sitting. And that's about as far as I'm going to go. It's 9 o'clock. I actually finished on the time I planned to.